to the Peak News. Hope that woke you up. Welcome to Tuesday. I'm Chaim Goldman, the Watchman. You're listening to us on AM 1460 and FM 101.1, The Answer. And guess what? It's not duck season. It's not rabbit season. It is election season, folks. I guess it's also hunting season. Depending on how you're looking at the politicians out there. I won't finish that sentence because I don't want to be rated here. But we're in a serious situation here in Colorado. We really are, in America and the world. But really, the only place that we can have any control over things, most of us, is in our neighborhood, in our city, maybe in our county. That's what I'm focused on. I'm an El Paso County guy. Rarely leave the county, and I can have an effect here. And I have a microphone that goes out over the whole region, the Pikes Peak region. Isn't that cool? And we invite you, I'll tell you in a minute about the Peak News, because you can have the microphone too. We want you to. But we really need to do something. We're staring down, if you've gotten your ballot and you've opened it, by the way, do not wait to open your ballot. Most of the time, you know what, the morning of, you open it up, you check it out, you mark it. It is so huge. I mean, we're talking 14 state ballot initiatives and 3 Colorado Springs ones. Okay, and try reading them. I think there's like a quadruple negative in one of them. You might throw your back out reading these things. They're complicated. But what I want to say to you, and I'm sure this is you, because you wouldn't be listening to conservative radio. I don't think, but I don't. I shouldn't assume anything anymore. Is you got to vote. Okay, it's not the be-all, end-all, but it's the best that we can. Our founding fathers made us the kings collectively, and what would you think if the king didn't pass any legislation or do any kind of anything? Didn't do anything, right? That'd be anarchy, right? The people would be let loose. So we have a collective responsibility to get educated and to vote. That's just one of the things that we have a collective responsibility to do. But let's just start there. But what we found out recently from George Barna, the faith pollster, is that half the people in America of faith are not planning to vote. Okay, I really hope that's not you, but let's face it. They say that thing, turn to the person, if you're in a group setting, turn to the person, on either side of you, because 1 in 3 people is going to get cancer, they say. And go, oh, it's going to be him or her. Well, it could be you. So, if the problem is you, fix it. If the problem isn't exactly you, try to fix the problem around you by talking to people. But the number one thing that we can do is we can get educated to what these initiatives are, which isn't so easy, I have to admit. But as a citizen, you need to put in the time. So, over the course of these weeks, as we're now in early voting here in Colorado and we're heading up to the elections, we're talking a lot about the ballot initiatives. We're going to have some candidates on. We're talking about things. But the big issue in Colorado is this Amendment 79 for constitutional abortion. And what this would do is enshrine abortion in our Constitution, takes 55% of the vote to do that. But once that happens, it's already legal here up to full term. But it would bring in a lot of other issues, including parental notification issues and taxpayer funding, which is currently constitutionally illegal in our state. So if you, from a moral, religious standpoint, already know how you're going to vote, then you already know how you're going to vote. But if you're a person who's wondering this, maybe you think, a woman's right to choose, maybe you disagree with the religious stance on that. But there are other issues here that I'll just say, and we're journalists here, but we have to say what we think. It seems really extreme, first of all, that we even need it. But now when we start talking about taxpayer funding, is this something we want to pay for? If a person is going to make a decision for an abortion, why not the person who's making a decision for a knee replacement or something like that? So we have that taxpayer funding, and anybody who thinks that a minor child should be able to do things without their parents' consent, as someone who has 6 children, that's crazy. Even at 18, they're not mature enough to make their own decisions, but definitely not before then. And just, yourself, you're not. So let's stop bestowing it on them. So to discuss this issue of Amendment 79, we have with us today Marcy Little, who is the director of, and there's so many of these organizations, Colorado for life?
Colorado for life.
Colorado for life. I'm getting it right.
Yep.
Colorado for life. And regarding this Amendment 79, the organization is?
Coloradans for the Protection of Women and Children.
And they are obviously opposing this. And what we're going to be talking about during the program today, because I am committed to you. You can know what I think. Okay, never going to let you know how I vote because I do a voter guide and everybody asks me who should I vote for. I said read the guide. By the way, churchvoterguides.org. I'll make a shameless plug, churchvoterguides.org. Get that, it's online now. Candidates will have ballot initiatives on in the next couple of days. But you need to be educated. You need to figure this out for yourself. You need to decide about voting your values. And that really takes time. And in order to get educated on this, we need to understand, why does the other side want this? We can assume, but it's not good to assume. And why is this maybe something that isn't good for our state? And I would say right now, in me looking at it, even if I put my religious values aside, I don't see it as something that's necessary, and I see it as something, but I have promised you here on the Peak that we will never tell you what to think. We're not trying to indoctrinate you. That's what the non-media that calls itself media does. Here, it's about empowering you. And in fact, we want to have you be part of this. Go to thepeak.news. You can be a citizen journalist, a tech, an intern, a guest, or a sponsor. We love our sponsors. In fact, we have some sponsor commercials coming up, so pay attention. I'm Chaim Goldman, the Watchman. We're talking constitutional abortion in Colorado here on the Peak. We'll be right back with Marcy Little. Welcome back to the Peak. I'm Chaim Goldman, the Watchman. You're listening to AM 1460 and FM 101.1 The Answer, and we are spending the whole hour talking about the constitutional abortion amendment, which is on the state ballot. You should have gotten your ballots. If they didn't arrive Saturday or yesterday, you should have them today. When you open it up, you will see that there are 14 state petition initiatives on there. Some are amendments, some are propositions. This one is the one that's getting the attention because, of course, it's about life, which is seemingly that's what the government's supposed to protect. And here we have a law that's talking about taking it away. Of course, those who support it call it a women's right to choose or health care or things like that. I can sort of understand how you can see it that way. I disagree with it, but as a journalist, my job here is to inform you. If you care what I think, I'll let you know what I think. But otherwise, what we're doing here today is talking about this, and we're going to be going into talking about late-term abortions and taxpayer-funded and things that are caught up in all of this. I want to say thank you again to our sponsors, and specifically our platinum sponsor, who is Springs Dentist and Dr. Craig Summer, Holistic Dentistry in Colorado Springs. They are our family dentist, and they help bring you the Peak. So please patronize them and all of our sponsors. Here on the Peak, we say the quiet stuff out loud, and we want you to get informed, and I'll be letting you know. We had Jim Miller commenting on ballot initiatives last week, and we said, that was so good. Let's do all of them. So Jim Miller, Just a Guy. We're about to release Jim Miller's Just a Guide. This is the first you're hearing about it, where Jim's going to be doing rants on, we recorded it the other day, Jim's doing rants on all the different ballot initiatives. He's straightforward, as you know, some humor, sarcasm. Figure we bring a little humor into the election ecosystem. No one's doing that. And look for that because we're excited about that. And it's informative, too. If you want to vote like Jim, you can vote like Jim. So, Marcy Little, Executive Director of Colorado for Life. Thanks again for being on the Peak.
Thanks for having me.
Great to have you here. So, why is abortion even on the ballot here? Let's start at the federal level, move it to state, and then even some things that are going on locally. How did we get here?
That's such a great question, and not enough people stop to ask that. So I would love to tell you why it's on the ballot. This started a long time before the Dobbs decision overturned Roe v. Wade, but that was a critical turning point for our nation. Most people know on June 24th, 2022, the Supreme Court overturned Roe, which had been in place for almost 50 years at that point. It allowed abortions essentially through birth in various states. States were allowed to have some restrictions on abortion, but it was very minimal. Here in Colorado, we have no restrictions on abortion, and so when Roe was overturned, it essentially kicked that decision back to the states. Now, some states had trigger laws in place that immediately abortion became illegal, it was no longer accessible. States like Colorado, we had just passed a state law saying abortion will be legal through all 9 months of pregnancy. It already was before that, but just because we hadn't passed any laws restricting it. So we codified it into state law. If you've heard people talk about RHEA, the Reproductive Health and Equity Act, in Colorado. So it legalized abortions through birth. People don't think that they happen through birth, but they certainly do, unfortunately. So, backing up, it's important for people to realize and understand that Colorado was actually the first state in 1967 to decriminalize abortion. So at that point, abortion was illegal. It was criminalized in all 50 states. Colorado was the first to say, nah, we think abortion should be legal here. Now, there were some restrictions.
I mean, this was for the rape and incest, was the original?
It was for rape and incest. It was for women of poverty. It was still restricted. I think it was only legal through the first 13 months of pregnancy.
13 weeks.
13 weeks, thank you. 13 months would be not
An
good.
elephant or something.
Yeah. 13 weeks of pregnancy. And then slowly over the years, we just kept pushing it back and back and back.
This was under a Republican governor.
Sadly, yes.
So it's already legal in the state. It was passed by the legislature up until birth. Why now on the ballot as a constitutional amendment that would actually change the Constitution?
Yes, so they want it enshrined. They're trying to do this in a number of states.
And who are they? Like, who's behind this?
The other side set up an issue committee. They're Coloradans for Reproductive Freedom or something like that. But it's all the usual suspects: Cobalt, Planned Parenthood of the Rocky Mountains, Color, all the different pro-choice groups in the state of Colorado and in this region, pushing to enshrine the right to abortion in the Constitution, which would make it a permanent right in Colorado. So we lose our ability to pass any type of restriction on abortion if Amendment 79 goes through.
So even though right now there's the way the legislature is set up, there would be no pushback, but
Right.
they're looking toward the future where maybe Republicans would take it back and
They're
then have
afraid
their
of
hands
us.
tied.
They're afraid of us. They're afraid the Republicans will take over again and push through legislation that would restrict abortion anyway. And when we say restrict, we really mean regulate too. You know, they don't want basic health and safety regulations in place either. They want abortion legal through all 9 months, no questions asked, no parents involved. The other thing that this ballot initiative would do, if passed, is it would remove the prohibition against taxpayer funding.
So that's actually in the Constitution in
Right.
Colorado. You cannot use taxpayer money for abortion.
Yep.
This would wipe that out.
Coloradans decided in 1984 that we didn't want to pay for other people's abortions. And that's a critical part of this that a lot of people miss if you just read the ballot language. But it would force taxpayers to fund abortions through state insurance plans.
So state insurance plans, but it's suspect that with the legislature the way it is, that would be extended in what ways? To pay for what?
It could be used to pay for transgender surgeries, for all kinds of other things. Our legislature over the last 2 years, if we've learned anything, is about radically transforming what Colorado looks like. And so we can only imagine the lengths that they would go to change what Colorado is like currently. So forcing taxpayers to fund abortions through all 9 months, forcing us to pay for transgender surgeries, completely cutting parents out of the picture would happen if Amendment 79 goes through. So parents, if you want to say in your teenage daughter's ability to get an abortion, this is going to go away if this passes.
And also potentially people coming from out of state making this an abortion destination state especially because the states around us have passed more restrictive laws.
Yes, we've already seen an uptick in the number of women who are coming here for their abortions, and we can only assume that number would go higher.
Okay, well, as we continue with the program, we're going to be getting into more details of this. But I know you wanted to mention something that's local news down in Pueblo, which is part of our broadcast area, that they're looking to make Pueblo a sanctuary city, not for immigrants, but for the unborn. So
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, this is breaking news happening tonight. The city council is introducing an ordinance that would make the city of Pueblo a sanctuary city for the unborn, appealing to the federal law, the Comstock Act, which was signed into law in the 1800s. It prohibits the flow of abortion paraphernalia and abortion drugs in and out of cities and municipalities. So it would shut down the abortion clinic that's in Pueblo. So if you, especially if you live in Pueblo, give your city councilor a call, shoot them an email, let them know that you support this ordinance, that you want Pueblo to be an abortion-free city, a sanctuary, a safe place for the unborn.
Now, would that mean anything if this Amendment 79 passes, or would that wipe that out?
No, I think it would still mean something because it appeals to federal law, which trumps any kind of state laws.
Okay, so potentially, even if it loses, like El Paso County, so, and it's even just an act of the city council or county commissioners? Could they
County
do that?
commissioners can pick it up. Yeah, there are currently 8 sanctuary cities for the unborn and 8 sanctuary counties for the unborn
In
that
America.
appeal to the Comstock Act. Well, there are more than that,
Okay.
but in states like Colorado with restrictive laws.
Okay, so the election is here. You need to get educated on that, on 79 as well as the others. One of the arguments that people have when people say this is going to lead to, late-term, full-term abortion, people say that doesn't happen. When we come back, Marcy Little, Executive Director of Colorado for Life, is going to be taking up that issue of late-term abortions. You're listening to The Peak. I'm Chaim Goldman, the Watchman. It's election season, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to The Peak. I'm Chaim Goldman, the Watchman. You're listening to AM 1460 and FM 101.1, The Answer. And it's election season here in Colorado. You should have your ballots. Please open it up. If you wait, you're going to put it back in, because you're not going to be able to do it in 10 minutes. There's all these candidates, and there's 14 ballot initiatives in Colorado Springs. There's even more. There's municipal stuff. It's like you got to spend the next couple weeks taking the time to learn about these things. And what we're talking about on the program today is late-term abortion. We have Marcy Little, on abortion and 79, Amendment 79, constitutional abortion. We have Marcy Little, Executive Director of Colorado for Life. And in this segment, she wanted to talk about the fact that, people say late-term abortion isn't a thing, but in her experience, it is. Marcy.
Yeah, people say late-term abortion doesn't happen, but then they say it sometimes needs to happen for the health of the mother. So what's reality here? Let's break it down and talk about it, because this is something that trips people up sometimes, this issue. They hear it doesn't happen, but I want to read you some numbers that are kind of crazy, and we won't get bogged down in the numbers too much, but I think it's important for people to realize that in 2021, so late-term abortion has been legal in Colorado for years, for babies that were between the weeks of 25 and 27 gestation, so in the womb, 25 to 27 weeks. In 2021, there were 25 abortions at that point in pregnancy. So 25 babies who could have survived outside the womb, likely, were aborted.
Because this is third trimester.
This is third trimester. That number jumped from 25 to 113 in 2022 after we officially codified it in state statute. That's a 352% increase in the number of late-term abortions that happened in Colorado, just over a year. We don't have the numbers after that. We can only assume that the numbers have gone up. For the people who say that late-term abortion doesn't really happen, I think they should think through and ask themselves, then why does a late-term clinic operate every day in the city of Boulder, Colorado? Warren Hearn has been running this clinic since the 80s. And he does late-term abortions. He doesn't do them for the health of the mother for reasons that we typically hear, late-term abortions need to be legal. He does them for totally elective reasons. So women who didn't decide until later in pregnancy that, I don't really want to have this baby, or they were trying to decide in their state whether they were going to have the abortion or not, ran out of time, so that now they need to come to Colorado. He does them no questions asked, so it's not for health of the mother. But for those who might be swayed by that argument to say, well, shouldn't we allow late-term abortions in case the woman's health is compromised? I want to give you some talking points and just some information that you can use in conversations. Late-term abortions are not necessary to protect the life and health of the mother. The reason is that late-term abortions can take 2 to 3 days sometimes to be performed because they're so late in pregnancy. The baby is so fully formed. The woman still has to give birth. She's just giving birth to a dead baby instead of hopefully to a live baby. In cases where the woman's life truly is threatened in some way, whether by the pregnancy or something else, an emergency C-section is a more caring option because it takes less time. Those can usually be performed in about 45 minutes, and that can help preserve the life of the baby. The baby doesn't always survive, but that's the more caring alternative. So when you hear we need late-term abortions to protect the life of the woman, that's really not the case. The other thing you need to know is that as soon as we codified late-term abortion in our state statutes, Leroy Carhart moved his clinic from Nebraska to Pueblo to open a late-term clinic to provide late-term abortions because he saw opportunity here, a market here that was going to be shutting down in Nebraska. So this is what is going to be permanently legal in our state. If Amendment 79 goes through, we won't be able to regulate late-term abortions. We really don't need this in Colorado. If you are in favor of common sense regulations on abortion, you should certainly be opposed to Amendment 79.
Hi, I'm Goldman the Watchman. You're listening to The Peak. That is Marcy Little, Executive Director of Colorado for Life. When we come back, we're going to be talking to Marcy about how did we become, in more detail, a pro-abortion state, and what can you do to get involved if you agree with her that this is not a good thing for us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to The Peak. I'm Chaim Goldman, the Watchman. You're listening to AM 1460 and FM 101.1. The Answer, and we're spending this hour talking about, well, this whole month where it's just election stuff. Like that's everything is election, and the big election ballot issue is 79 for constitutional abortion. It would enshrine abortion in the Constitution. Needs 55% of the vote in order to pass, so that's somewhat of a high benchmark. But I guess it really depends on who gets out and votes. And also, what people are thinking about it, because the pro side that has this on, there's a lot of money behind it. By last count I saw, I'm sure it's gone up. There was like $8 million raised for things that are very frustrating to me personally, with all of the ministries and everything going on in our state, billions and billions of dollars, even just here in the Pikes Peak region, that hardly any money's been raised to educate people, to promote it, to advertise for it. And so getting the information out, again, if you want to agree with me, that's great. Of course, I love people to agree with me. That's the best, right? But the thing is you need to understand these things and make a decision for you and your how and determining for your family and the people around you to talk about these things and decide what to do. Don't check out, because then you're giving your vote to someone else who probably doesn't have the same values. And so this is a real time for you to step in, and it's not just that. There's a lot of ballot initiatives. We'll be covering a bunch, including the voter guide, church voter guides, but that's from a journalistic standpoint, and Jim Miller, just a guide that will be coming out within the next couple of days with Jim's special take on all of this. We have Marcy Little, who is the director of Colorado for Life, talking about Amendment 79. Marcy, how did you come to be the director of Colorado for Life? What's your background in this space?
Yeah, well, it turns out when you found an organization, you kind of de facto get to be the director. So I started Colorado.
Yeah, I know about that.
I started Colorado for Life 4 years ago because there was a void in our state. So plenty of pro-life groups in the state doing excellent work serving abortion-minded women who need resources. But there wasn't a single-minded, politically oriented pro-life group at the time. So I started Colorado for Life.
In fact, very often they stay away from politics,
yes.
Very specifically.
Yep. Yeah, they don't want to touch it.
They do a great work, but they don't touch it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So my background is I've been in the pro-life space for the last 11 years now. Before that, I was working on the pregnancy center side. I worked with pregnancy centers. I still do some work with them. Love their mission and love what they do. But was kind of taking a look around and was like, okay, if I'm going to stay in Colorado, because I'm from Georgia originally, I got to get engaged in this fight in a more significant way. where there's a void. So that void happened to be politics. I've always been interested in politics, but not interested in running for office or anything like that. God bless the people who are. But yeah, that's how I started Colorado for Life, why I started it. We exist to educate and mobilize everyday Coloradans about what's on their ballot, who's running, where candidates stand, and things like local activism. Down in Pueblo this evening, if you're in Pueblo and want to go check that out at City Council, I know they'd love the support there. But just to be that voice on behalf of citizens of Colorado to stand up for their pro-life values.
So at the beginning of the show, toward the beginning, you gave the history of Colorado becoming the first to decriminalize it under a Republican governor, interestingly. But what's happened in Colorado to get to this point? It used to be a very conservative state in a relatively short amount of time, and I thought that this would be the one issue that might mobilize the church in this state, but it doesn't seem to have done that. What do you think that the underlying level, is going on here that's making this where people are going, oh yeah, it's going to pass. Like there's no way this isn't going to pass. Even though it would seem to be unnecessary and some things extreme, some people might say, why is it almost people feeling like, oh yeah, this is where we're going?
Because I think we've experienced, sadly, unfortunately, we've experienced significant pro-life defeats. There have been a few pro-life ballot initiatives that have been introduced in the past 10 or 12 years. All of those have failed. We've seen failures at the state legislature because we frankly don't have the
Although
numbers.
interestingly enough, the numbers that I've seen with each election, every time it's on the ballot, a higher percentage of people vote for the anti-abortion each time. So there seems to be a movement in what I would consider a positive direction or an
Yes.
anti-abortion direct, but yet, yes.
I think there's been a lack of leadership, which is why we started Colorado for Life in the first place. People don't know who to rally around and who to rally behind. So, we've made touch points with over 200,000 people in the state just in this election cycle to try to rally the troops and get support. And I know there are other groups out there doing that as well. I think the fact that does need 55% of the vote to pass should encourage pro-life people to go out and vote, to encourage their friends to vote no. I think churches have been hesitant to talk about it because we've bought into the lie that this is a political issue and churches can't talk about political issues or pastors can't talk about candidates or issues. Certainly they can, and I would say they should. When the churches in Germany were silent on the issue of the Holocaust, Jews lost their lives. When we have been silent as believers and as conservatives on the issue of abortion, more and more unborn babies have lost their lives. We've been silent too long. I think we feel sad about it, but it's not enough to feel sad. We need people to act, because what the other side doesn't want to talk about is what abortion actually is and what's at stake if Amendment 79 passes. We have to have the courage and the moral clarity to say abortion is a euphemism. We got to talk about what abortion actually is, which is the taking of an innocent human being's life. Often, especially when we talk about late-term abortion, in brutal, barbaric, horrific ways. We have to be willing to stand up against that and say, enough. It's enough that this is already enshrined in state statutes. We do not want this in our Constitution. We do not want to be forced to pay for the murder of unborn babies with our tax dollars. We do not want to support initiatives that would expand abortion access and that would wave a flag to women in other states saying, come to Colorado. You can get your abortions up until birth here. All of these things should be abhorrent to everyday Coloradans, and I think most people have no idea what's going on. I think most people, when they think about this election, are thinking about Kamala Harris versus Donald Trump, and however they feel about those candidates is going to dictate how they feel about what else is on their ballots. If they're not excited about voting in the presidential, they may not even open their ballot to realize other very important things that are on there. So my plea to people would be, regardless of how you feel about the candidates, regardless of how you feel about other issues. Maybe you don't even understand all the issues. There are so many judges on the ballot. How are we supposed to know how to vote on these things? At least pick the issues on the ballot that are important to you. And as a parent, as a taxpayer, as believers, as conservatives, Amendment 79 should terrify us, so that if that's the only thing you fill out on your ballot, and I'm not saying that should be, but that would be enough reason to turn
And when
a
you
ballot.
open your ballot, get educated. There's a lot of voter guides out there. Churchvoterguides.org is the one I'm involved in, truthandliberty.net. Others have come out with ballot initiative one, candidate ones. Get educated, try to understand this, and do your best. Because I just say, if you check out of the fight, you're not part of it. And yeah, it's discouraging. It is discouraging, but you know what? We're Americans. We don't give up on that. But I really do say, regardless of what I believe, if you disagree with this and you want to vote differently, I don't like it, but I respect it, because I believe that there should be, one citizens and one vote, and I also believe in one election day, not 3 weeks, but that's a whole other issue. Okay, we have a couple minutes left. Tell us about Coloradans for the protection of women and children, and how people can get involved with your organization, even at this seemingly late date in the elections. Certainly there will be life after the elections. So, we shouldn't make elections the be-all, end-all, but they're very, very important. So please be involved. You have a couple of weeks to turn in your ballot. Marcy?
Yep. Coloradans for the Protection of Women and Children is our issue committee that we set up to fight this ballot initiative. So the Secretary of State, IRS tax code, all those fun things require different entities to tackle different issues. So in my capacity today talking about voting on Amendment 79, I'm speaking in my capacity as the director of Coloradans for the Protection of Women and Children. If you would like to get involved and help, you can visit our website, covoteno79.org, CO for Colorado, voteno79.org. You can order yard signs that will help. All the proceeds of that are going into our digital campaigns to fight this amendment. There are other volunteer opportunities on the website you can check out. Even at this late point in the game, there's still a lot of work that can be done to turn the tide on this thing. Ballots just dropped, so some people probably have voted already, but most people still haven't. There's a lot
Talk
we
to
can
your
still do.
neighbors.
Yeah.
Just talk to your neighbors. Now, there's a coalition of pro-life groups. People may be getting information from Right to Know. You just mentioned them real quick.
Yep, yeah. Right to Know is a coalition of different groups across the state.
Pro-life groups.
Pro-life groups across the state. It includes pregnancy centers, all kinds of different groups that have kind of rallied to work to defeat this amendment as
So
well.
you may be getting information from them, but overall, the pro 79 side has, 50x the money, and so you're going to be getting a lot of, YouTube videos and mailers and everything from them. Do the research, find out what this is about. As we say, get informed and vote your values. And the website is covoteno79.org, covoteno79.org, Marcy?
Yes, yep.
Okay, so for more information about the Coloradans for the Protection of Women and Children, go to that website. When we come back, we're going to be talking about what I think is the biggest issue on this for people, which is the taxpayer-funded side of abortion, and in this state, if this passes, that you would want to consider. And then, of course, Jim Miller and the Peak Rants. We're talking with Marcy Little from Colorado for Life, and we'll be right back on the Peak. Welcome back to the Peak on AM 1460 and FM 101.1. The Answer. If you like that we say the quiet stuff out loud here, we do that every day. We seek to do the questions that nobody's asking and demanding the answers that nobody's demanding. But we need help, and that's why we invite you to be a citizen journalist or a tech, and we have an internship program. You can be a guest, you can be a sponsor, be part of what we're doing here, this big grassroots citizen initiative to take the media back in our region. And then maybe elsewhere, but hey, we need to do it in our region first. So we're finishing up. Final segment with Marcy Little, Executive Director of Colorado for Life, talking about Amendment 79, constitutional abortion on the ballot. And I think that the biggest issue, I think for Coloradans, because I've been here 6+ years and see whenever it's about taxes, people are saying no, and they want taxes, they want their Tabor money back. But this would allow taxpayer funding, which is now constitutionally illegal, to do it, and then that could be extended by the legislature to other things, including people from out of state. So, Marcy, in the Blue Book, it says, and the Blue Book is the Blue Book is the book that you get to explain to you the ballot initiative that's supposed to, by law, be written simply, but it isn't. So now you have another document. It says in there that there's no fiscal impact to taxpayer-funded abortion. I would think that, taxpayer-funded fill in the blank would have a fiscal impact. How did they get off saying that, and how do you see that there would be a significant fiscal impact here in the state with taxpayer-funded abortions?
Yeah, they get away with saying it. They get away with a lot of things, but I think they get away with saying it because it's not an automatic trigger that if Amendment 79 passes, automatically tax dollars would go. The state legislature would have to act, but based on what our state legislature has acted on in the past, we know they would be quick to do that, quick to make sure that tax dollars are going to fund abortion, because what Amendment 79 does is it removes that 1984 prohibition against tax dollars going to fund abortion. So it removes that, which means we're able to use tax dollars. Now, the same thing is being introduced in the state of Florida with the same type of impact, and Governor DeSantis said you have to include a fiscal impact statement on the ballot so people understand this. Here in Colorado, we don't have the same leadership that maybe we would like that the state of Florida has, so there will be no fiscal impact statement on our ballot.
Okay, so how do you feel about that? How would you feel, regardless of whether you think abortion's okay, a woman's right, obviously if you don't want it at all, you would be opposed to having your money be spent on it. But for those of you that believe that it's a woman's right to choose, would you want your taxpayer dollars going toward that? Currently, women can choose to have an abortion in the state up to full term, but they have to figure out how to pay for it themselves. So that really, to me, for most of the state, from people that would consider themselves moderates, that wouldn't even be religious on this, that they would consider, how do you message that out when you go? I mean, are we paying for any other kind of operations in the state that might actually, because usually you want to have an operation, if you're going to pay for it and you're going to raise money, do a crowdfunding, it would be to help somebody live. This is seemingly to help a baby die. If you think the life of the mother, is this something to be paid for? What do you talk to people about in this regard?
Yeah, certainly not. The way we talk about it is people should not be required to fund things that so vehemently go against what their consciences would allow. So because the issue is the life of an unborn baby and taking that life, people should not be forced to pay for other people's abortion and their ability to do that. So again, if you care about your taxes being raised, if you care about not having to fund other people's abortions, you should vote no on 79, regardless of how you feel and how you believe about abortion in general. This one issue, I think, is the reason we should be able to defeat it.
Okay, Marcy Little, Director of Colorado for Life. Thank you so much for being on the Peak News.
Thanks.
And please get informed and vote your values. There's a lot of information out there, but it's going to take time. You're going to have to be a good citizen. And here's Jim Miller, just a guy, to encourage you to do just that with the Peak Rants. Thank you for listening to The Peak. As we are fully into election season, look for your ballots, open them up. It's going to take you quite a bit to get through it, and then you still won't understand it. So then you need to do research, and you need to look. There's a lot of voter guides out there, both for the candidates and the ballot initiatives. There's articles being written. People have been interviewed. You can go to their website. If you're going to be an engaged citizen, if you don't like what's going on, okay, it's like, 40, 60, 80% of the people vote, 100% of the people complain. And you really don't have a right to complain, but I want you to have a right to complain. I would rather you vote and have a right to complain, but in all of your, as Jim Miller says, you're overtaxed, overworked, everything. Yeah, we all are. But this is our opportunity once every couple of years to speak to the political people, to the governmental people, and have your voice be heard. If you believe that things are being stolen, well, you know what? Get in there and fight anyway, because otherwise we've already lost. And here on the Peak, we want your voice to be heard, and a vote is a big part of that. So, churchvoterguides.org, That's the voter guide I'm involved in, truthandliberty.net. Others that are out there, get the information that you need. Well, shout out to our platinum sponsor, Springs Dentist and Dr. Craig Summers, Holistic Dentistry in Colorado Springs. The Peak airs Monday through Thursday, so we'll be back tomorrow, same time, 3 to 4 p.m. here on The Answer. Tomorrow we'll have DA Michael Allen talking about his candidacy in Judicial District 4 and ballot initiatives on judicial discipline, bail exemption, parole eligibility, and more. And then on Thursday, congressional candidate, U.S. congressional candidate for CD5, Jeff Crank. Coming up next on The Answer, The Larry Elder Show. And check out our 100-plus podcast on thepeak.news, www.thepeak.news. The Peak, we say the quiet stuff out loud, and now in our second season, we're saying it even louder for such a time as this. Remember to vote and tell others to do so. Shalom.